Great, welcome. Hello, Stephen. We are here again on Soul to Soul Conversations because it is my request. I've been requested to speak to as many people as possible to bring this into everyday life, how we work with spirit and how we operate and how we are guided. And sometimes when you've got something to deal with, there are just different ways of doing things rather than just trying to bulldoze your way through it. So I've invited Stephen on today. So Stephen, please introduce yourself, say hello, and then we'll just kind of see where we're guided to talk about.
Okay, well, hello Fiona. My name is Stephen Towill. I'm a hypnotherapist, so I do a lot of kind of clinical-based hypnotherapy, which is helping people with a lot of things like anxieties and mental, mind kind of issues, fears, phobias. But I'm also a hypnotherapist that specialises in more spiritual use of the hypnosis. So it works with things like past life regression, more between life. So it's where we go after we would pass from a past life. So that's the sort of my passion, really. It's something I've been doing for a long, long time. And yeah, it's
brilliant. I remember reading a little bit about your story. I met Stephen, or rather Stephen kind of like popped up in my Instagram feed, and then I loved the pictures he was using and the things he was saying. And I'm kind of interested in the past life bit, because when I was traveling back in 2003, one of the books I was reading was Journey with Souls, or Journey of Souls. And it kind of, I love things when they blow my mind wide open. And that was basically, I had the opportunity, it's a long story, but I was kind of like I'd freed myself up, or rather soul had intervened and freed myself up from my business and my relationship and everything else, and set me off on this trajectory. And that was one of the many books that I was reading. So this subject really intrigues me as a way to kind of open you up to the fact that it's not just you, it's not just this physicality. And Stephen, you were explaining that so well earlier on about how we're not just what we see.
Yeah, and the book that you mentioned, Journey of Souls, it's Dr. Michael Newton that wrote it, and he, I think it was like 7,000 test cases through his career that he had investigated, and he tried to put a bit of science behind it, and just working with all different people to see what sort of experiences they get. And that was the main thing, is that we are souls who are coming down almost like a play, or something. We all take parts. So it might be that in one life we were someone's mother, now they're our mother, or we're son, and really that's what he was starting to find, is that everybody, so many people were saying the same things, which is that we are here to learn, to expand our knowledge as a soul. And through all our challenges, all the things that we face day to day, is all about our growth as a being, as a soul. And it will repeat and repeat through as many lifetimes as it needs to. But and that's the kind of beauty of it all, is that everything that we're doing is spiritual. It's all about the spiritual development, the spiritual goal.
Stephen, you knew earlier on that you had this ability. So would you say that you were kind of brought up like that, or you always knew? Whereas for me, it was kind of more like a boom, more like a mind-blowing experience, and I've had several. So how did it work for you?
Yeah, it's funny. I've been asked the same question, and I guess I was a slow burner. There's a lot of people that seem to just get a bit of an awakening, where they're maybe just going on about their daily life, and then suddenly something starts immediately happening, and it's boom, what's all this? For me, when I was young, I was I guess I was always a curious child, someone who was really questioned things. Like, I was fascinated by ghost stories, alien stuff, anything that was unexplainable that somebody was experiencing. I remember the Reader's Digest, I don't know if you remember that, but they had a big book that called The Unexplained, and I can remember at 13 or 14 sitting just fascinated reading all these stories about the unexplained. And I think that's where my mind started to kind of veer off into maybe exploration, trying to look at, there's more to this than what we maybe see. And the first thing I did actually was found, I'd seen hypnosis on TV or something at 13, and I think that stuck in my mind. And when I was 17, the first thing I wanted to do when I started college wasn't to go and get books on the computing stuff I was doing, but I found a book. I was trying to find anything on hypnosis. I was fascinated by hypnosis, and then past life regression, and it was basically my 6-year-old brother was my first ever guinea pig on past life regression and hypnosis, and it worked. And I was
just leave him up there somewhere. You brought him back.
He was picking daisies out of carpet to start with, and I'm going, wow, this is actually working. And then it was the past life regression. He went through a whole life of being a father to a wife and a child. At 6 years old, he was worried that the woman was going to, he was dying of a skin disease, and he was worried about his wife and his child, leaving them behind. He was an author. He was telling me, he was giving me a street name. He was trying to read a street name, and he was saying a place called, they said Nitch Hill, which is actually a place in Glasgow called Nitch Hill. I don't know if that was where that was, but he was able to be reading the street signs. So that's where I started, and that's what kind of got me into starting to explore maybe more about what we are and what we would maybe call reality, or what is there a reality. It's sent me down that kind
of I think we're all born with this. It's not a gift, it's not a talent, it's just who we are.
Yeah.
But of course it gets educated out or fear-mongered out or whatever. I've tried to keep it very much alive in my 2 boys who are now in their teens, who have a very personal relationship with their soul. One of them, he said to me, "Mummy, I want to go and find my totem animal." I'm like, okay, fine. But he came out knowing this particular character that he could always talk to, and who helped him with his friends and helped him with being bullied at school and everything else. And my younger boy, we were walking in the woods one day, and he told me later on, "Oh, I've got a soul too." And I went, "Yeah, well, you're just copying your brother." And then I was taking him to rugby, and I said, "Okay, well, let me just talk to you and see what's going on," because they have names for their souls as well, and that sort of like keeps them very much in a good relationship. And I did too in the beginning. And my youngest son was sort of telling me things like this wide open space, and then bringing things forward, and if I asked enough, then it would be written here. And I'm like, I didn't tell him that. I didn't teach him that. This is all coming through naturally. I'm like, yes. So I had to kind of go through my way of being brought up, very strict and all the rest of it. So basically had all this squashed out. But I do believe I had those abilities. You said you were dreaming about certain things. I always dreamt about witches and things like that, which then I think, well, yeah, I am a sorceress of a kind. And I know that I ended up living in France in a village where 600 witches on a witch hunt were sent to trial and then burnt.
Yeah.
It's a lovely witches museum here. And I believe that is then soul intervention, especially when I'm getting the words fallen off the wagon, but it's not really much falling off the wagon, but you're falling off the soul purpose, and you're too much on the human purpose. I believe that the soul comes in and sort of kicks you up the backside and just changes things around so that relationships don't work, your job doesn't work, those kind of things don't work, for you to get the opportunity to think, what the hell's going on? What am I here for? And start asking those big questions and asking for help.
Yeah. And exactly, it's like you said, you say when we get it trained out of us, and that's kind of technically correct. There's a Swiss psychologist, I think he was, his name was Piaget, and he studied cognitive development. He's actually responsible for, he was an assistant working with the guys that developed the IQ test as well. And I think he published his first paper at 11 years old, this guy. But he studied cognitive development. And between the ages of 2 to 7 years old, they call that the pre-operational period, where we don't develop we're kind of critical mind is still developing. And in that point, that's where a lot of children are open up to past life experiences, seeing spirit, seeing other things, but they will take on a lot of the beliefs and a lot of what the parents will tell them, or they'll tell them they shouldn't say that or they shouldn't do that. And through that, our critical mind will develop in a way that it will push all of that away. And even there's another guy called Professor Ian Stevenson, who was a Canadian psychologist. Was it a psychologist or psychiatrist? I can never remember. But he basically studied children with past life recalls, and he went through hundreds and hundreds of different cases, traveling all over the world, studying past lives. And what he said was that through all his studies, it seems to be about the ages of 2 that is when children start bringing the recalls. Between 0 and 2 is that's the point where you start developing motor skills and speaking. But 2 to 7 is when you then start developing just pre-operational. And he said that it would usually start to fade after about 7. So it makes sense that children are wide open, but in the way that we start to learn how to adapt to the reality that that's been created, that civilization and all our ancestors have basically put this version of reality together through all their experiences. It's like we fit into that box and we get disconnected from all the sort of things that maybe that we did know or we were more in tune with.
If you think about it as the past life thing as well, so if you knew that we are still that, the soul is still that, has access to all of that, and then you think, oh God, I could bring in the, all the sorcery stuff, I could bring in all the goddess stuff, I could bring in I was a Viking warrior, like I could bring in that kind of strength, I felt it, know, and then I was able to see the relationship I had with my mum, and why I was drowned at an early age, and why this has happened. It's like, oh wow, okay, I get it. Then you see the big picture.
Yeah, that's a perfect analogy, because at the same point you think about us as a single, you as Fiona or me as Stephen. We are an accumulation of the experience of this one life. We might have learned how to play a piano, or we might have learned to play a guitar. We learned to drive. We've learned to maybe I was an accountant for a long time. You may have been really good at, but what you've done is in this life you've accumulated a lot of skill and a lot of learnings. But when we don't, and sometimes to utilize these skills in other ways and other scenarios, they become natural to us. They become just it's something that we've learned, and it will play out into a new situation. And past lives is a similar thing. You can talk about past lives, but really we're just this accumulation of all experience. And all these skills as the Viking warrior, or the skills of a witch with the healing abilities, they're all part of what we've got right now. It's just in the unconscious. And some people, this will rise up for them, and it's maybe time for them now to be utilizing these skills. They may have a purpose. And this is something, as you know, reading Journey of Souls, there's a lot of stuff about life purpose and why we were here in the first place. And by maybe learning the lessons that we've came to learn, some people might have simple lessons. They might not be here to change the world, but they may just be here to learn about compassion. They might be here to learn about love, or learning about family units. Sometimes it can be simple lessons that's why we're here for. But there is, seemingly at this time, I'm finding with a lot of clients that things are changing. The world is changing. We're on a shift, and things will break down. But we're
on a very pivotal point right now. Yeah. I think we've seen it in the news, we've seen it everywhere else. And this whole thing to do, I wanted to talk to you about that as well. But the whole thing about COVID and lockdown and everything else. For me, this whole phase is about, who are you really? Yeah. What's really going on? And though I do it for other people, sometimes I'm like, yeah, actually, that's another question. Again, I could just ask myself that. just to see what's coming out. Also, the light is changing, the vibration's changing, things are sort of moving much faster now, manifesting is changing. I've written a book about how you create. And it's just, things are just so different now, as in, you know, it's not writing a list down and doing it methodically the way we do it. It's like really getting into the vibration of it and how quickly things can change. And my whole history since I've been in France has been to do with detoxing. And I didn't understand the link between the soul and detoxing. And then I was like, I see the progression. I see why I had to prepare my body, if you like, and prepare my mind, and not just physically, cellularly, but get rid of the dross and the beliefs and the vibrations that were in my body so that I could bring forth more of who I am. And I don't know about you, but I'm hearing a lot of people kind of talking the same as I am about burning up and having physical symptoms and certain things that are happening at the moment. And the reason I want to do these calls is, don't ignore that. It's all there for a reason. It's happening cosmically.
Yeah. And it's perfectly right. I mean, there's always this take, I guess, that we live in a physical body and then we leave it and go back to where we come. And I can understand that perception. It's got a vague kind of reality to it. But when you say the detoxing, again, if I go to something like quantum physics, where you know that we're built up of cells, and then we go to the cellular level, then down to there's atoms, and into atoms there's, everybody's probably seen an atom in chemistry, the circle with the electrons spinning around it, and the nucleus in the middle. You get to the nucleus, it's a proton and a neutron. Within them is quarks, which they're not things, they're events that appear, disappear, but within the atom, it's all zero. It's 99.99999999996% of nothing. And the only thing that makes things physical is the electrons spinning around, and all the atoms there, when they come together, two negative charged electrons repel. There's never your hands never touch. They're simply magnetically repelling each other. So when you think about a body is nothing more than an energetic construct of, it's like an extension, I think, of our soul. It's a part of our soul, the body. It's still all our energy. So if you're feeding, think about maybe a concept of a car. If you've got a Porsche or a Lamborghini, you think of the body. The body is one of the most technically advanced machines that we've ever. Nobody can create a body because it's so.
And it's reconstructing. It's never fixed or final.
Yeah. In 7 years, it can just about 90% or 95 or something regenerates. We're not the same person physically that we were 7 years ago. We've completely regenerated.
Even in a year, even in a day, we're not the same person. You can change things in a very short space of time. And I talk about that with physical symptoms. Once you understand what the root cause is, the physical symptom disappears.
Yeah, and that's it. And so this energy of who we are, like going back to the cars, that's what I was saying. If we were to drive our Lamborghini, this £200,000 flashy car, and there's the petrol, and then there's sewage, and you pick up the sewage and start pouring it into the Lamborghini, that's worth 200 grand, and you're piling utter garbage into it. Would you do that to? We do it to our bodies, and our bodies they're incredible advanced machines. Eyes, think of the eye. The eyes are like super cameras that can take in millions of bits of information. And
I used to sell cameras, and I was just fascinated by selling a camera, saying, my eye can do better than that.
Yeah.
My eye can focus. Where I used to sell lenses, like really expensive CCTV lenses and all that kind of stuff, and then microscopes for, lenses and things, and I was like, my eye does that automatically. Oh my God, that's amazing.
If you run a key across a Lamborghini, it's going to scratch. If you run a key down and you cut yourself, it heals itself back up again. The body is amazing. And the way that I see things is that you hear people talking about mind, body and soul, or mind, body and spirit. I don't think they talk about it, but I don't know whether they actually make the connection a lot of the time, because I think it's about what you're putting in your body is part of your energy. And if you're working with energy in spiritual type ways, then there's going to be much more harmony in your energy if you're looking after yourself, if you're, like you're saying, detoxing and keeping your body clean and being...
But that's a mental and an emotional side as well, because that all comes into the body and that all has a big effect on the body too.
Yeah.
And then when you understand that you are a spirit, and I hear the soul inside somebody's body who's kind of saying, help, help, because, you know, the person has become so disconnected. There's so much in their head about thinking about how to run this life, how to survive in this life, how to do this in this life, how to get over the abuse or the relationships or whatever's going on. They haven't realized that all of that they're carrying, not just weight, but sciatica. And I mean, I cured sciatica for myself in a day by using, I knew that the relationship I had, and I kept telling the story in this life, how bad it was, and blaming, to go back into, I knew I'd had a past life with this person. And I'm like, oh my God, you've given me the gift that I never got in that past life, to be a single mom and raise the kids and all the rest of it, because I couldn't do that in the previous. I'm like, okay, now I have to rewrite that story and what I'm experiencing in this life. So that for me is how the spirit assisted me to see what was going on. And the sciatica was my body saying to me, there's something in there that you're not dealing with, you're not looking at it from the right perspective. And when I saw it, I changed the story. Sciatica was gone about in a day or so, and it only came back a year later when I was telling the story again to someone else. I went to my body, okay, do I have the sciatica because I was retelling that? And I just got, oh yes, my body has reacted. It went, yes. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to spend the afternoon changing the energy, rewriting the story. Sciatica gone.
Yeah, it's incredible, and that's the mind is like the gateway. It's who the mind is, what we are and who we are, and it's all there. I'm using hypnosis to help people with that, but that I even think that hypnosis isn't even some people say that there's no such thing as hypnosis, that everything is hypnosis. And if someone comes to you with some kind of problem, you're not hypnotizing them to resolve the problem. You're helping them to dehypnotize them through the way that they've hypnotized themselves. And that can be through past life experiences. It can be through current life experiences. You think of the world that we live in at the moment. It's polluted in fear. The media, that anything you watch in news, there's never a good story. It's
Please don't watch the news.
I know, exactly. Turn it off. I don't watch it. I sometimes have to tune in just to see what the narrative is in the world.
What rubbish is going on.
I've no idea what's happening, and then I can look at all okay, they're saying all that stuff now. But I think, and what we're having to do is we're having to stop. We need to stop being so engulfed in the fear. Things might happen, and may require an element of fear. Fear is a survival emotion. It's a good emotion under a certain circumstance. If a bull was running at you, for instance, you want fear to fire the fight or flight response. But if you're just living life in fear of news stories or what might happen and what that person is saying is going to happen and what's going to happen if that president is elected, or if you go through your whole life like that, you'll be living in fight or flight. You're going to be in this fight or flight mode all the time. When you're in fight or flight, your body isn't healing. It's actually in a high state of alert. So all the energy of the body is in a survival mode. It's getting ready. All your muscles, all your blood, your heart is all ready to run, or it's going to have to fight somebody. So it's prepared. So if you're in fear, if you're in stress, all these things, your immune system won't be healing. And
your digestion completely stops.
Yeah.
Everything just like stops working altogether.
Yeah, because you're in a fight or flight mode.
Yeah. The survival mode is a real killer. And I think what this phase is that we're in now, this pivotal point that we're talking about, the reason that all this is sort of coming up to do with the elections and COVID and the fear and all the rest of it that we're being fed is that we're putting in so much good stuff, although, you know, more positivity is around in our lives, we're more aware of it, and it has to then wash out and let that come out of the body, of your environment, of, you know, the space that we live in on the planet, because it just cannot survive in that level anymore. So this is my belief, this is what I've been told, it's the evolution of the population to just move all of that out.
Yeah.
Just get rid of it. It's just, it doesn't serve you. It doesn't, you know, you can't survive like that. It's an old way of being. I wanted to ask you, Stephen, something on a more everyday level to show how spirit works through you. Not just to do with work, but in your everyday life. I had another lady who kind of said, I had to bring up the big guns. I had to go and do some paperwork, and I was really wanting to get this through. How do you, or, you know, have you got a story about how you've managed to take that on in a different way than maybe Joe Public would?
In terms of a connection to spirit and how I would change the way that I would maybe react in some way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that is always there for me. I can remember being an accountant and having to deal with some situations, and I might have been absolutely petrified in my head or worrying about something or trying to figure out what am I going to do. I can't deal with this situation, and I would ask for help. I would just, in my mind, I would go into my mind and say, I need help with this. And there was always an answer that came up. There was always something that would say, just do this, or don't. What was it one day? I was walking down with my head down. I remember that as well. And it was just look up. And I looked up and I realized that I was so caught up in my own reality of all the kind of stuff that was going on that I didn't just look around and say, it was a blue sky, it was a lovely day, and I just thought, wow. And
you could have missed it.
Yeah, I was missing it, but this is what I'm getting told for client. A lot of clients have been told this is about nature as well. Nature is what we are. We have become so disconnected from nature. This COVID thing, now, I would say to people, if it's obviously killing people, so if you're vulnerable or if you're old or elderly, protect yourself and do everything that you can to protect yourself. It's natural. But what's happening is we're being so isolated and we're being cut off, and what's happening is that will only create more disconnect from nature. It's all a natural thing, and it was one day, I think in March or April, again I was out walking, and again I was down in my head thinking about, oh, we're going into lockdown now, and I wonder how long the lockdown will happen and what I do with my business, and then I stopped and I looked around and I could hear birds whistling, the river was flowing by, the trees were still there blowing about in the wind, and I started to think, that there's absolutely nothing changed here. Everything is still the same world that we're living in, just that our minds have been drawn into some other perception. And I was going to go with this to someone, I forgot what it was now, but clients are being told the same thing, that we are part of nature. We've got to be in tune with nature, get outside and be out in nature. That is creation. That is the natural world, and we aren't. If we start sanitizing and locking ourselves away from everybody else, and what we're going to start to do is our own immune systems will start to become unable to deal with any natural external things like bacterias, and so what we're doing is we're potentially locking ourselves away from surviving in a natural world. And if we keep going down that route, it worries me to know where it leads us, because I think we need to be surviving in nature and surviving in a natural world.
What I've been told is that being in nature, because I mean, I'm told sometimes we won't send you any more clients until you take nature on as a daily cleanse.
Yeah.
So it's almost like this filter that's around you, it gets clogged and muddy and all the rest of it. And just by, but you can still do that not being in nature, and it just requires you to go back to your home, to go back to yourself, which is on the very, very inside of you, which is what I teach, how you reconnect with your body. Because we are like batteries. we're connectors. We connect the heaven and the earth. You know, we're just like trees, but we walk around and we regenerate ourselves and we think and we have emotions and all the rest of it. But that's just the essence of who we are. We're just a nature, a being, and we have a force field that needs to be cleaned off in nature. And I was just told, the same as, you know, when you do Reiki or something, you always have to like shake that energy off. And because it's invisible, this is the interesting thing about talking to you and people who do this kind of work. Because it's invisible, it is so difficult for someone who's been very trapped in the corporate world and been brought up like that to even fathom that is possible. And then I'm thinking, well, how fantastic that we have the books like Harry Potter and Eragon and all those. Look at unicorns. There's so much in all the stores and things now for people to sort of get into the fantastical. So I think that's, you know, soul is helping us, spirit is helping us to kind of open up our imagination so that we can see that it's not just what we can see and touch.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly. Open your mind up to possibility. Don't be restricted by what we believe is all there is, because there is so much more. And I think, and this is another message it's about that I get through a lot of clients, is that there's a catalyst that's happened now, and there's a structure breaking down, and it might be fearful. It's a fearful place for a lot of people, but it's all about focusing on who we are. Keep our minds on nature, not on the narrative of the way that the world is going.
The expectations on the material stuff, the money, yeah, and
it's the amazing thing about it is it's very simple. It seems so simple, actually. We complicate it in our mind, and when you actually start to I hear a lot of people through these sessions saying the same things. But I suppose I should maybe explain a little bit what I do. But I'm a facilitator. I use hypnosis, and it's the person's experience. I'm not guiding or channeling or anything. I'm actually allowing the person for their experience through their mind. And it's interesting for me to be seeing all these different people bringing very similar things.
And getting the same sort of things coming through. I mean, I totally and utterly agree with the ladies that I deal with too.
Yeah. And the cool thing is sometimes get clients that have come with a perception of, you may have read about the shift, and sometimes you're thinking, well, are they just in some way recreating what they've heard or read? But every now and again I keep getting clients that have got no knowledge of any of it, and they're bringing through the same stuff. And even at the end, I'm very indirect in the way that I'll ask questions. I don't want to give anybody any type of put any thoughts into their head. So I'm very open with my questions. It's just something like, what are you experiencing, or are you inside or outside, or are you what's happening now, and what are you experiencing? There was a guy in the other day who started talking about the world changing, and I'm sitting thinking, well, maybe he's been reading all this stuff about the destruction, the way things are breaking down and destruction, the old systems of control and greed and fear, they're all breaking down. And he was talking about, at the end of it, it was a much better place. So I was thinking, oh, he's maybe read some stuff about that. And at the end of it, he was just telling me, he was a basic guy who had read nothing. Like he was actually getting his own. He was having a bit of an awakening through healing. He was starting to find that he can heal people. He couldn't understand why he could do this. And it was partly the reason he was coming to me, was to try and understand a bit more about what is it that he's supposed to be doing with this. Is he supposed to be helping other people? I think he was an engineer, but he's thinking, what is this? But when he talked about this change through a breaking down of the old systems into the new, at the end of the session, I just said, I mean, that's a lot of stuff I've heard about this happening, and said, have you read about that type of stuff, or is that something you've been looking at? He's like, I have no idea. I've never heard anything like this before. And that's what I love about it, is that when you get some of the clients that just have they've never followed anything spiritual. They've just been living their life, which is perfectly fine to live your life and learn your lessons, but they've not had any external influence.
Yeah. That was why it was so brilliant for me when I started speaking to my boys about what I had actually learned, and I was allowing myself to experience, not just through books, but just like, oh, what's that about? How do I feel about that? Educating myself about emotions and all those kind of things, coming from an experience where emotions were really shut down, then to hear them saying things, I'm like, oh wow, yeah, okay, so that really is real then. And I loved your story about when you were an accountant and how you were just asking for help. And I think if there's one lesson that I think would be brilliant, is it's like a prayer, but it's just ask for help. I was sewing up the curtains the other evening, and I've been doing this for a while now. And as I said, I call my inner self a name. I call her Roma. It's my middle name, whatever. And I'm like, I can't see the end of the needle, and I certainly can't see the thread. I've tried, and could you please do it for me? And the next time it comes through.
Yeah.
And I was doing that yesterday, and I had to change the thread 5 times, a long piece of curtain. And then I went into the kitchen, and I said, I've just sewn up the hem of when I was listening to this recording, and I had to make notes of the times. And I said, 5 times I asked Roma for help, and it's just so easy, apart from one time when I didn't really believe that it was going to work, and then of course it didn't. But this is how I'm working, and I'm seeing the signs, and I'm asking for help, and I'm asking, like, can you just send me a publisher for my book, because I really got no idea how that's going to work.
Yeah.
Oh, I need an editor. Can you just bring somebody up that would be perfect for that? And whatever you're asking for, and of course I journal it and I write it down. What kind of things are you doing that you're seeing, on a very simple day-to-day basis? And this asking for help is brilliant. Is there anything else that you're doing?
I follow. I once got a reading a long time ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and I was told that I was like a little fish swimming with the flow of the current. And I think or maybe sometimes when there's a little bit of a challenge in life, it could be something to do with, it could be, I don't know, involved with people, or it could be a client, it can be something. So I'll maybe I'll go and ask for help. So these are the times that I'll usually ask for the help. But it's for me, I go with the flow. I think sometimes we can try and get in the way. We'll get caught up in our own mind too much, and we resist, we fight against things. And sometimes if you can just let go and just accept what's happening and get out of the way of your mind, and I think you're guided. You are, you will be shown that way. And it's like you're saying. I think one word that I was thinking as you were telling that story there was about belief, and it's simply believe. The mind is so powerful. If I go back to one example of quantum physics again, I don't know if you've heard of the double slit experiment, where they fire, I think it's electrons, they fire through or is it photons? They fire them through the double split, and what happens is that they discovered that what happens is that whatever they expected to happen will happen. So they fire it through first, and it was all like a scattered, like a kind of like a snowy type sort of result. But then when they had the expectation that when you fire through these 2 slits, you would have 2 sort of rows of all these electrons all hitting at the back. That's what happened, and it blew. This is why things like this blew science out the water. It's suddenly you discover now that our belief, what we expect to happen, can actually change the event of something like that. And it's the same with things like placebo. They have to do double-blind experiments because they've realised that what the person that's taken the placebo and what the person administering, giving out the placebo,
sends a message.
they can actually affect and influence what will happen. So it's shown how powerful the mind is. The mind we can create our reality, but it's about us believing. Because if we don't believe that we can do it, then we won't be able to do it. And it's like when we come back to that Piaget thing of cognitive development between the ages of 2 and 7. When you're a kid, your imagination is wild. But we're making up games. We're making up our own kind of little kind of movies or whatever it is, and we lose that. And the critical mind becomes so developed and so structured in a way that we have forgotten who we are. So I think the biggest thing is about believing and opening your mind to possibilities.
Yeah, that's very interesting that you say it's believing. Well, of course, it's about believing and trusting your body and trusting what you see and what you hear, but also having your body and your mind trust you as well. It's a two-way thing. But the phrase you used about getting out of your own way, and I think that's been one of my journeys.
Yeah.
So dogged, being able to, you know, when you're capable, and I love working with really capable people because you really have to take them out of their mind.
Yeah.
And when I hear them, I'm taking them through something, and I said, you're still in your mind. You answered from your mind. Oh no, I didn't. I said, okay, go through the process again, and it takes time, you know, to sort of trust and believe. Goes back to our conversation before about, but it's invisible. I can't see it, feel it, or touch it. How on earth? So we need verification as human beings. We need verification. So we need to see something or hear something, and that's where past life's great, because you get to experience a story and then you begin to believe something. I work with ladies to do with their bodies or something like that. So as soon as you start to see a change, and you know it's not just to do with what you're eating or how much you're exercising, it's to do with how I'm thinking about that ache or pain, or taking my attention off it. So we play with the perception of it, and then you get the reality of something, the verification that it's true.
Yeah, that isn't, and this is the thing. It's to get out of your own way, but it's also to wake up at the same time. And I can think about years and years. 17 years I worked for a media company, a big media company. I was by then I was a business finance partner. I resigned to do what I do now. But I can think of years of, when we talk about trance, we talk about hypnosis. I know that I was living some disconnected maybe, and some kind of I was living the reality of being an accountant. I was completely in that reality. I was just doing my job. I was working out what I had to work out there. I would interact with the people that I needed to interact. I would go home at night, have my dinner, go to bed, go to sleep, wake up in the morning, repeat. And about 17 years of my life I went through, well, just in that one job. Actually, I was working before then as well, but I think it's that we can become so closed-minded on other things, and it's simply because we're not focusing on them. We're not drawing more attention, and if it is, and this is the power of something like hypnosis. How hypnosis is so good, because it's getting that critical mind, the part of the mind that wants to question the things. The more you get that out, it accesses the unconscious mind, where everything else is all the sort of the learned responses, but past lives and the connection to our spirit or soul, who we are, speaking to the higher conscious mind, or work with guides, and it's all there and it's all within us. It's just opening our minds up, focus our perception.
It's brilliant. When you were speaking then, I was given this story that I'd completely forgotten. So you're talking about you're working in your daily life, but clearly you're using your talents within that daily life, because you're asking for help and everything else. And I remember one of my very first jobs, worked on American Air Force Base, and I'm on the telephone making calls to airlines to buy tickets or space or something like that for the airmen and their families. And I would just kind of go, okay, next time I'll get through, because it would just dial and dial and dial and dial. And I go, okay, this is not working for me, so what could make it easier? Well, next time I'll get through. Boom, next time I got through. And I remember playing that game and my manager being really kind of cross. And I said to somebody, yeah, okay, I'll get you the tickets, no problem. And he said, you can't promise that. Anyway, I called up and got the tickets. So I realized, even from, I was 19 at the time, we were doing those kind of playful things. And it's not until I got really into survival mode, mortgages, raising kids, then it became more critical, money aspect and everything else. And I think that's when a lot more of it disappeared from me, and I've had to sort of bring that back and get back into the tribal. I remember traveling in, I was in Australia, and the guide was kind of saying, yeah, no, the Aborigines, they know the boundary for the female side and the male side, and they don't walk across the boundary. And I'm like, oh, I'm learning all that now. I'm really kind of being able, he said, well, hocus pocus, that's rubbish. And I'm like, oh, interesting.
Yeah, it is. That's what it is. It's bringing it back to. It's just, if we're going to make any transition, we need to start to look at the possibilities and looking at being positive in our minds, not to be going things black hatting things, which is I don't know if you've ever heard of that saying. It's the 7 hats and 5 hats. I can't remember what it is. So get creative people that will put black hat it, which will put the thing down. But it's always about keeping the mind open to possibility of knowing that there's always a solution to every problem. And I think, to me, it's, you could call it spiritual if you want, but it's actually just becoming who we are. It's being aware that we are much more capable than what we might think that we are. And the more that you start to do that, like the things that you were saying, like getting those airline tickets, or it's starting to kind of have fun with the manifestation element of it, or seeing the signs that things that maybe appearing, have appeared 2 or 3 times, numbers that appear all the time. So all these little things that start to kind of shift your mind into a realm of possibility, of alternative ways of being and a different perspective. If you lock yourself into one, just a reality that can't change, if it becomes so structured and so confined, and you stick to that, you'll never be able to you'll never experience anything or be able to kind of develop in any other way. You'll be stuck in that perspective. And I think that.
But don't you find that the soul intervenes at those points and makes, so for me, with my ladies, it would be like, this diet's just not working anymore, or my mindset's not, my business is not working anymore. I used to do it this way and it just does not work anymore. And it's that point when you ask the question, what's going on? What am I doing wrong? What can I do differently? Then you open up and kind of go, well, there's got to be something else.
Yeah, I love the thing. See, the way that you ask questions of your mind. Now, if you just say to your mind, that can't be done, the mind will say, fair enough.
Okay.
If you say, how could that be done? Your mind will start firing lots of possibilities. So imagine it was any simple problem. Let's say that you were, I don't know, a boat in a river and there was a hole in the boat, and we thought, well, how do we get over to the other side? Because that boat's got a hole. So we start thinking, well, how could we plug the hole? How could we
walk on water?
Yeah, water would be good. But it's simply about asking the right question. It's asking you. Use your mind for constructive ways. It's so powerful and it's so capable of knowing things and understanding. And all we need to do is ask. And we say it's our mind. It will be our higher self as well. And those higher selves are all connected to guides and everything else. So everything's all connected. So we might think we're asking our mind, but we're asking an army.
You're asking a universal question, aren't you? As you ask a question, you're asking that of your mind, of your body, and of your soul. And you will get a response. It may not be today, it might be today. And I think that's interesting in the fact that I wonder if that's the response, and just go with it.
And it's, when you're asking that question, like you're saying, it's a universal question. You're opening to creativity, the creative mind, that which is everything. And this is one of the things that I love about when you look at artists, or if you look at Van Gogh or something, some guy who was, I don't know if you've ever done creative stuff. I was a musician. I've done a little bit of painting. I enjoyed that. But there's something that, even writing stuff, you go somewhere, you're in your mind and you're trying to you're pulling in ideas. And what I found when I write is that a lot of the posts I do, I find in the morning when I wake up, the first thing, I've got these ideas in my head, and it's, if I don't get them written down within half an hour, they disappear. And then if I go back in 2 hours, that was quite a really cool thing, but what was it again? And it's gone. Even if I take notes, I'll look at them and I'll see them, and I'll try to struggle to try and get it back. But when you wake up in the morning, I think you've got that connection to that creative place. It's a bit like the work that I'm doing with hypnosis is taking people into states where the critical mind's a bit offline and you're more connected. And I think the same thing for artists, for musicians, people that are great people. Tesla said that he believed that there was some kind of, he thought the brain was a transmitter, that we were bringing information and putting information out. He could basically create something in his mind. He would design it in his mind, and he could test it in his mind. It's incredible that he could actually see why it wouldn't work, and then change it in his mind before he would actually then bring it into reality.
There was a wonderful film about that, about a mathematician, and he was taken from India to Oxford, but to prove his theory, because he had these theories. And then by the end of the film, they were actually curious as to how do you do this? Because he physically had to give them verification of what was going. He said, God puts it on my tongue overnight.
Yeah.
And that's what you're saying, the state that you take people into, this creative state where actually we don't exist. I take people in to a state as well, so that your particles, your body, your physical form drops away, and so that you just see the soul, or the soul of the person that's causing you the grief or whatever, so that you can have a communication on a completely different level. And it is in that space that we are when we first wake up in the morning. We're still in that. I mean, that's what sleep's all about, isn't it? Just to reconnect us. That you're still in that space and you get the songs or you get the answers. Brilliant, fantastic.
Paul McCartney, he woke up and wrote yesterday, wasn't it? It was Scrambled Eggs. It was the first words. But he woke up with this song in his head, and he had to go quickly go and write it down. And I think that is I think we can do it through things like meditation, but I think it's a very key point when you wake up in the morning. I think there's still in that connection, and that's where I found that I can get a lot of creative ideas, and I think there's just some people that are very good at it. If I look at Van Gogh or Beethoven, Mozart, all these people have been incredibly talented, creating amazing music, amazing art, things that have brought joy to people for hundreds and hundreds of years. Now, something that you can create that brings joy to people it goes for a long, long, long time, that's coming from the joy of what creation is. And all they're doing is reaching up and bringing it down into this kind of little restricted reality that we live in. And I think
that's with the books that we read, the films that we watch. I don't believe that there's any coincidence about the Harry Potters and the fantastical magical films and things, because I think that's what humanity needs. And those are being brought down to the people who can actually bring those out and share them. Pharrell Williams also said that he woke up with that song Happy, whereas he'd been writing for everybody else, and he was being interviewed by Oprah, and he said it was the vibrations of the whole song and it just went off. Everybody uses it to sort of get themselves happy in the morning.
Can you imagine the world that we would live in if everyone started to develop this understanding that we can actually connect and just bring this stuff in? That creation is just possibility. We can have anything at all. We can be anything. We could do anything. But it's just about the belief is good, because it then gives you that position to start then accepting that there is other things or other ways of doing things or other ways of connecting. And then once you start to do it, once you start to see that, well, I've actually, what I've done here is quite amazing, or I've seen this and I've done that, I've created that, and I never thought I could have created that. It's a bit like, what was the other thing I was thinking about there? I remember when I first started as the accountant, I remember seeing this Excel spreadsheet thing that created, it was like, run a macro, and it pulled in all this information from the system. It was like watching it all, kind of pulling it all together, and it was just doing it all automatic. And I just thought, somebody must have been like a genius that created that. How would somebody ever do that? I could see accountants doing jobs, and I thought that must be really complicated. That is way beyond my skill. But through life, I just kept learning. I kept figuring things out. Look, I love a problem, and I'll work out how things can be resolved.
And you probably call yourself a bit of a detective as well, huh? you're kind of like wanting to sort of get to the root of something and just
I hate to be told something can't be done. I always believe that there's a way to do it, and I'll go looking at possibilities. I think, and I told this story a couple of weeks ago on a podcast, but when I was young at school, I was slow. I thought that I was in the I remember being in a classroom maybe 5 or 6 years old, and the teacher was teaching stuff on the board, probably maths, sums or something, and then she said, right, everybody now go and do the exercises. And I remember looking at them and I'm like, I don't know, I haven't got a clue. And I remember being really scared, and I remember looking around and everybody's writing and I didn't know what to write and I didn't understand, and I think I copied the person next to me and get caught for cheating. But then even through school, I found that things like I don't know, sciences or maths, all these types of things, I was a bit slow with them. But creative things, music, art, woodwork, parts of English, I was really good at using my mind to create. And what I soon discovered, that even as an accountant, it wasn't about being an academic genius to be able to be a best accountant. I discovered that being creative it took me so far in my career as an accountant. I was able to change the way things were done, find better ways to do things, build different things, teach people how to use Excel that I taught myself. I never got taught Excel, but I was then training people. And back to that thing about the journey, it was all about being at a point and looking back to that point where I thought that person must have been a genius, had done all that. But to have the realization, and through your own journey, that I was more than capable of doing all this stuff then. Through my experiences and my learnings and working things out and challenging myself, I became a person that I thought would only...
You changed your story.
Yeah. And this is the thing, it's to have the belief, to believe in yourself, to know that you're capable, and to explore the realms of possibility, because anything is possible. And I think as we're moving forward as a race, as humans, this is a key time now to utilise that, because changes will need to happen. When there's no structure breaking down, we need something to replace it. And that's where people with good minds and people that are positive and know a better way to do things, this is
creative thinkers. Your imagination, I think, is one of the best tools that is out there. And so long as we don't allow it to be sucked away, I think anything that we can read about or imagine is possible, and we get to create that. And that's basically what I've been writing about as well, about how I created the houses, or selling a house for the price that I wanted and nobody said it was possible, coming to live in France, changing relationships around with exes and kids and all that kind of stuff by just using your imagination.
Yeah, it is. We're powerful people, we're powerful beings.
Very. And I remember reading books about the power of the mind years and years and years ago, just being fascinated that people could take a health problem from somebody, off somebody, and take it on themselves or something. And wow, mind waves and telepathy and all those kind of things, just fascinating.
As the mind is, even just doing, I say a hypnotherapist, but help people with things like anxieties, and it's even the type of things, when you can see that you're facilitating that, you're asking your mind to make the change. And I've seen people with pain, physical pain that they've suffered with for years, and within even one session, in some cases, I've actually helped them just to, like you say, your sciatica, it goes like that. It's as soon as, whether it's a belief, whether it's something that, I don't know, it's an old program that you're taking on and then it gets stuck. Maybe the pain was there for a reason at some point, but now it's got no need now, but the mind just gets stuck in the program. So it's about kind of really, it's back to the power of the mind. Again, the mind is an incredible thing. It's capable of so much, and all we need to do is utilize it, to believe that the ability is there. And the more that we start utilizing it, it will be a bit like what I said with this path of only a genius could do that, to being 15 years in the future, suddenly looking back and thinking, that's actually nothing as complicated as maybe what I thought it could be. Imagine if that person back then could see what I'm doing now, they would think that that would be incredible. And I think everybody's got that in them. Anybody can look back. And I remember doing a photography. I was watching a photography video, and he said, sometimes the best picture, always look behind you, because sometimes the best picture is behind you. And I love that, knowing that you're kind of constantly looking forward and you kind of forget where you came from. And I think when you can get through your life and look back, take a moment to look back at where you were maybe 5 or 10 years, you'll have made some amazing, you'll have done amazing things. You'll probably be quite proud of some things that you've done and how you overcome a challenge, and how you've maybe learned how to deal with a type of person. Maybe you were in a relationship that was mentally or physically abusive. You found the power to get out of that relationship, and 5 years later, you will not allow yourself to be caught up in that same type of relationship. And even that's showing you growth and ability in yourself, that you now can
how you can change. Yeah, exactly.
And how you can change. Yeah,
exactly. Oh, this has been such a brilliant sort of conversation. In fact, it's covered so many things about how we cope on a daily basis, knowing that we have the ability to ask for help, and being able to see how we've changed our lives, and we can change the lives of other people too. Thank you so much, Stephen. I would like to have you back on again in a few months, because there's always so much more to sort of discover, more little bits and pieces of detail that sort of come out in there. It's just such a fantastic, pivotal conversation about how we are a humanity in the process, in the birth canal of actually becoming a very different kind of species. So thank you so much. If there's anything sort of, last on your lips, or the last thing on your tongue that you would like to share with us today, that would be absolutely brilliant.
Really believe in yourself, and keep your mind open, and believe in possibilities. And you may go down the wrong path, but just keep your mind open and you'll find it. It's always
you've said so many truthful things in there about believing in yourself and using creativity, your imagination, and power of the mind. It just blows me away always, the power of the mind, and just what we can actually create if we decide that we're going to have a play with life, rather than get stuck in the survival mode, which is unfortunately where the news and the papers and the politics and the education and health insurance and all want us to stay scared.
Yeah, that's it. I know. And let go of the fear. The fear won't serve you at all. It sends you down the wrong path.
Try and just see it through a different filter.
Yeah.
This is why we're having the conversations today, just to let you know that there are different filters that you can look through. Get out in nature and just clean up your filters, and start enjoying life a little bit more.
Remember that you're part of nature, and that's it. We can enjoy life, or we can live in fear for the rest of our lives. That's a choice.
Yeah. Want to be able to go in my grave like horroring all alive. Thank you very much, Stephen. I shall be in touch with you again soon. Thank you so much for your time today. Very much appreciated.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you later.